Oh, you know, there is nothing more stressful in life than a baseball game. I'm a Cubs fan. I'm wearing my 1969 Ernie Banks jersey today. In a second, our co host will also be showing his Cubs fandom. But the end of the day is I was on vacation for the last 3 days and I came home and I thought, hey, it's 5:08 p.m. Let's sit down and watch a game. I watched the Cubs versus the Brewers. And I want to say that there is nothing more stressful than when you're only up by 1 run and you bring your closer in the bottom of the eighth with 4 outs to go, and every bat matters, every pitch matters, everything goes into this, and the season is over if somehow the Brewers get one more run. Well, the Cubs bat to live another day. They're going to be able to play again tonight. Again, they may win or lose, but in our payments world, a lot of times our back is against the wall, and if we don't get the right answer, we don't answer our question at the right time, we don't put all the pieces together, we don't see the ultimate success. Just like when we're biting our fingernails off at the end of a game when you're clinging to a lead by 1 run. And so Mike Stetzel and I are going to answer some of your questions today. If you're joining us live, we will be looking in the chat and seeing if anybody puts any live questions. But we've collected 3 of the most common questions, and we'll certainly get through the first one where we go back and forth, and we'll get that. But Mike, before we go, it's just us on office hours today. I know you're a Cubs fan. We haven't even talked about it. Were you watching live last night, and was that not the miserable
Yes,
15
it
minutes where
was
you're just,
miserable.
oh, it's fun, but it's miserable, and I wouldn't
Ah,
change it for anything. You understand this. My son, I just was with my son. It's an IU student, also a Cubs fan, sports media, and he got out of class at just around 6 o'clock and walked over to Fat Dan's, just a couple blocks from where his class was in downtown Bloomington, and watched the game with a bunch of rabid Cubs fans, which he had fun doing. I was glad for that. But that was a crazy night, and sometimes life is just stressful like that, isn't it?
it is, and for us to hold off a one-run lead against the best team in Major League Baseball has not been our forte this year. And as you said, you bring in the closer. Or if you recall, our last very successful Major League outing was 2016. We did the same thing with Aroldis Chapman. At a very weird moment, he had never pitched more than 1 inning, and we did the same thing with him, and it paid off. So you got to love these things where we're trying to protect all these pitchers, and it means you got to use a bunch of them. But those questions are for those guys to figure out. It's easy for us to be armchair guys, but we're here to help you with the questions we can answer.
It is. So hopefully, we're not going to be telling you when to switch out, bring your closer in, when to make some pinch hitting choices, but we are going to be telling you on how to make decisions on pricing for your merchants. And one of our biggest questions that we still get asked, and so in one of the things, you can go to our YouTube channel, and we've discussed this multiple times, so you can hear Danny discussing it, but you keep asking it, so we'll try to make it clear, and we always want to make it very clear what this is. The difference between dual pricing and surcharging. And Mike, I'm going to throw this over to you and let you start the process, and I'll jump in after you.
Sure, good, because it's not a long. It is kind of a long answer. There's a lot of pieces to it. So let's hit the very first one. The tip of the iceberg is surcharging means we're only placing a fee, and in this case, we're allowed to say fee on credit card transactions at a maximum of 3%. We are not placing any fee on debit card transactions, and therefore the merchant is responsible for the fees on those cards. So that points up a couple things for us. One, the merchant is going to have to pay fees now. So that's one thing you can emphasize. If somebody says, "Oh, I don't want to charge debit cards," well, then you're going to have to pay those fees. Obviously, charging credit cards 3% is less profit than 4% on dual pricing. So with that segue, dual pricing means we are offering two specific prices, a card price and a cash price. So, in effect, what we're saying is if you pay with cash, it will be less than the card price because at minimum, we have to display Visa MasterCard suggests that our merchants display both prices or at minimum the higher price. So that way, when the customer comes to the point of sale, they're going to be getting a discount in their mind because they're paying cash. Not in their mind, they really are. So that's the tip of the basic thing behind it. You want to pick up anything from there, Nate?
I'll add this. I mean, one of the things on the surcharging side, we said it's not debit cards, but it's also not FSA or HSA cards where you're opting out. And that's really important, like in a dental office, where you're being able to quickly identify that you're not adding any extra cost to that FSA HSA card. And I've been working with one of our specific offices that does a lot in the
Mm,
dental and vision care, and they do a really, really good job of presenting this to optometrists and to dentists and to their office staff, and helping them understand that, hey, you're going to charge 3% for every card that's not an FSA, HSA card or a debit card. And then you're going to pay what it's charged. And they do a simple, easy 3% for every credit card, eliminate all the credit card fees, and they do 1.5% on the debit. And what that does is it provides them, they're right in there on an average dental office or a vision office. They're right in there, pretty pushing up to 100 basis points, which gets you that 1%. And part of the advantages of doing dual pricing is it does provide a larger margin for us to be able to have a revenue share with you. But we can create some of those numbers, especially if you're saying, look, we're not going to eliminate all your fees, but we're going to make it very transparent, very easy in the surcharging world, and making sure, hey, we're going to take all those debit cards and make it very easy for you to know what you're going to get charged on them. If you charge $100 on a debit card, on an FSA card, on an HSA card, you're going to get charged 1.5%. That's going to cover all of your pieces. You have choices of how you do that, but it's a really clean way to do it. Mike, how are other of our partners pricing that? Because you have to make that decision how you're pricing the debit card prices when you're using the surcharging model.
I see a lot of what you just said. A lot of people are doing it at 1%, especially in a higher ticket situation like an auto repair shop. But some are doing as high as 1.5, like you said, for the example of our partner that's doing this in a lot of places where those cards are prevalent. And I think that you alluded to is there's still profit to be made at that 1 and 1.5% on pin on debit because it's such a low interchange cost. So it's not like we're having to walk away from our profit altogether on those debit cards. It's just a bit of a reduced amount. But as you said, very simple and transparent.
Um, and we want to make sure, and I want to make sure for those who are watching live, I'd love to get a live question. I have two more questions lined up
I
for Mike and
know.
I, but I'd love to get a live question. I know a couple of you are watching live, so we'd love to get that. And at any time, you can email Mike or myself, Mike at pptdesk.com or Nate at PayProTec.com. Yes, we mix it up, making it more difficult for you to remember the two domains at the end. But back to the surcharging, one of the things that I think is being extremely clear up front, because the options are there to be able to be clear to your merchant, to help your merchant understand what is what they're getting into, how much they're going to be paying, and what they're getting out of it. One of the other things is you can choose to say, hey, make sure you understand some of the value, because one of the things of those value on the dual pricing is we're going to be able to get more equipment into your system. So if they're a restaurant and they're looking at using Quick POS or Hot Sauce or Paradise, and they're looking to jump in, there's a lot more equipment to be opportunity when they're at 3.5 or higher on the
Mm,
percent versus being in a surcharging market. And a dual pricing, we have lots of tools to be able to help them think through. In this modern AI, you can recreate the menu, you can recreate the digital menu board, you can get them into a kiosk, so that dual pricing and that opportunity to be able to do it becomes more and more difficult when you have to you have 100,000 SKUs in a retail and you have to replace the dual price at each place. But all those can be done because you can get into Greta and get digital shelf tags and have dual prices. And, there's a upfront cost, but if you're going dual pricing, there's some opportunity there. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to try to figure out how to do it. I always say the transparency and the simplicity to the merchant sells in a lot of places. I think merchants like knowing the reason Square was never the cheapest. They were the first of us to make it a lot easier for us to understand, okay, we're only going to be at their original 2.69%.
right.
And they had no transaction fee. So they're like, man, I can understand that. I think most people are, I'm going to for sure get $97, a little extra change on every 100. And that spoke to the merchant. And it wasn't just the small person selling out of their desk at college, but it was anyone else who was putting the business together. They're just like, man, I can do the math. I know how much is going to be taken out of my account. And I think there's a lot of clarity in there. I'm looking up
Well,
here. Oh,
and
go
that's
ahead,
I was
Mike.
just going to say that's a good segue to this question, I
Yeah.
think. So, Restaurant Talk Podcast has a great question. We have
Yeah.
charged a flat transaction fee of 25 cents in the past for debit cards. Is that not the case anymore? Well, It definitely can be the case, especially if you have a good handle on what your average transaction is going to be for your merchant. Absolutely a great idea. In fact, on $100 transaction, that's 2.5%. So that's very profitable. Another thing is up until the recent past, the last couple of years, we were not able to charge a flat fee on our debit transact. We were not able to change it from whatever our flat fee was. We had to charge that on debit, and now we have that opportunity to use the percentage. And I think it's, to me, it's a little easier to explain and manage if you're going to have an average transaction. It's all over the board. But no, absolutely, if you know that 25 cents is going to keep you in the black, absolutely keep it simple that way too, and say, hey, Mr. Merchant, every time you use a debit card, it's a quarter. Simple enough as well.
Yeah, and I think making sure that it's just clear, because I think a lot of times what's happened, our partners have hey, have said, "Hey, we're going to eliminate all your fees." Then they put them into a surcharging process, and it's not 100%. And that's even true on dual pricing sometimes, because we see it. You go 3.5%, and then you have a lot of international cards and huge Amex expense cards, and you can get to the point where there are a couple dollars being spent. It's not 100% clear wash at the end if you go 3 or 3.5%. If you go four, I've never seen a situation, to
Right.
my knowledge. I hold it again. Amex may do this. They may jump in there, and they just raised their annual fee, another $200 or something on their top cards. Eventually, who knows? Their interchange
Wow.
rate may get up there. It's you never know. And Capital One's doing some of the same things. We're seeing all these rewards. Who knows what's going to happen? But at the end of the day, we're fighting to get every penny back into the merchant's hands, trying to make sure they have opportunity, but creating that margin so we can invest in them and invest in you as our partner, and making sure we're telling that story as we're going through. And surcharging certainly does it. And yes, I didn't. 25 cents on $100 is point two. Yeah, but not
Ah,
250, but
ah,
yes, but you're making, but the transaction fees, you just have to choose how you do it and make sure you disclose it. And in the surcharging world, that I think more and more merchants just want clarity and ease of making sure they know what they're getting into. Because when you're making financial planning and you look at your $100 and you're like, I'm going to make somewhere between 96 and 98, or 90, 90, 5 and 98, and you start looking at, because we have our competitors, and some of us, and our system allows it. You can charge 5% flat if you want to and create a bigger differential. And we're seeing some of our competitors do that and saying, hey, you're not going to pay a monthly fee, but you're going to pay 5%. And there's all ways to do these pricing. That's why there's a lot of flexibility. But at the end of the day, I think what sells to most merchants is the fact that you're going to have a clear understanding of what it costs them to be able to accept those credit and debit cards, and understanding where it is. So that's how I would do it. That's also where I would do it. Now, moving to our next question, Mike, and I'm going to take the third question, and we'll see if where we are on time here. But we
okay.
rolled out our ACH product. It's now part of Payments Hub. We had a false rollout in April, and then we had another rollout. And I think, to my knowledge, we're good. No one's. I assumed if you brought this question that people are asking.
Yep.
So ACH plays in that dual pricing world. It certainly plays because there are reasons to use it, and there's opportunities to be able to make some compensation and still be competitive
Yeah.
on it. Walk us through what our options and opportunities are with ACH, and even just a brief, 10-second description of what ACH is. Somebody doesn't know it.
Definitely. ACH means electronic check. It means that your customer is going to enter their routing number and their bank account number, and that's how you're going to, or that's how they're going to pay you for a service. For example, if you send an invoice, or they can pay you for a service by giving you that information over the phone. So with ACH, the big thing is for your merchant is to typically take larger transactions. If you've got a merchant that sells a lot of wholesale goods, I have a customer who sells fencing, literally fencing, and they have a customer that buys multiple thousands of dollars a month in fencing, and he, you know, didn't want to pay the credit card fee, and they didn't want to pay the credit card fee, so now they use ACH. And back to the point of debit, it doesn't mean now that we're losing that ability to make that money. A lot of us are pricing. In fact, if your merchant were to sign up on Payments Hub through that automated process, it's going to set them at a 1% charge. Very, very competitive. And our buy rate is only 8 cents per transaction. That is it. So on that 1%, you are making profit still. Um, and so in order to do that, you're what I'm getting at is you're still making a profit. So offer this option. It's not a bad thing. Before we offered it ourselves, we used third-party vendors where we just passed the fees through to them, and we as a company and you as a partner did not make any money. In this case, now we can make a bit of a profit on it.
It is. And ACH is one of those pieces because you're seeing the other fintech players jumping in there. So I'll use Venmo, which is heavily sponsoring my favorite Big Ten sports and offered me a Michigan debit card with Venmo on it. And so they targeted me right on my Instagram. Of course, then I have a Venmo account and I was like, yeah, I'll take that. So here in the next weeks, I'll be very glad to have a Michigan Venmo card. But in that, when looking at the Venmo is they've always been able to have connect to through your debit card, but now they're exposing through their bank connections a routing and account number so that you can use ACH transactions from Venmo. You can do that through Affirm. You can do that through other third-party banking like Cash App. And so it's another way for us to communicate and be able to bring money back and forth, and also capitalize on some of the functional systems that we give you to be able to set the pricing. Because a lot of times ACH was a fixed rate. Our buy rate is very low, and you can choose to say, hey, you're going to be able to move money for pennies on the dollar. But at the end of the day, it also gives you a place to be able to say, hey, you can accept ACH, get into that, some of those Cash App and Venmo situations where people are wanting to use some of those third parties, not wanting to always use. Now, Venmo's then also putting their debit card out, so it could be run as a debit card, but it can also be run as an ACH. It's just another way to move money, to do it
Hmm.
inexpensively on our end, and be able to, but also still create some profit margin. Will it be as much as 4% on a flat 4% on a dual pricing solution? No, it won't. But it does provide opportunities, and it makes you competitive in the marketplace. Because let me tell you, Stripe and all of the other competitors that are in the market are starting to use this, and we need to be up there and swinging in the fences.
We
So
do
go
have
ahead, Mike.
another live question, if you don't
Yep.
mind. Restaurant Talk Podcast asks, can 3% surcharge end up costing the business more if they do a lot of card not present, like pizzerias where they take the card over the phone? Um, the quick answer is probably not, because if you're charging 3% and just knowing what we know about pizzeria businesses and their interchange cost, you're not taking a lot of those cards that Nate just described, the Amazon Blacks, or geez, Amazon, American Express. Those high end cards are not the majority of what they're taking. So you're probably going to see some interchange costs, though, that are going to push quite a bit over 2%. So what's going to happen, unfortunately, is our and your profit is going to be reduced, because that interchange now, instead of being 1.5 or 1.6, 1.8, is now going to be pretty solidly over 2%, and our that gap between interchange and the 3% is where we take home our profits. So I hope that answers your question, but I don't see it ever going over 3% interchange in a pizzeria situation. Great question, though. Very good question.
Yeah, and what it does is when in the surcharging, and this is our complaint to Visa and all of our friends that have created these rules, it really just limits our profitability margins. And it is a strategy. If you're a pizza place, probably, and I don't know that, this is me speculating, so no facts here,
Exactly.
but if you're a pizza place in the fintech, Gazwan, I know you're asking this question. You're down in South, Manhattan, Battery Park. You're going to get more Amex cards and more high, 2.8 to 3.3%, and you're going to push up, and it's going to really limit our margin. I don't think the spread will ever, because there are enough debit cards out there and there's enough mixing in the place that we won't, but our effective rate can get up in that 2.7, 2.8, 2.9 in
Yeah.
certain situations, and make it that we're making very little. And then we're back to the interchange plus pricing in the world where we're charging IC plus 5, and we're in the world where, hey, if you don't process $1 million, we don't make enough to buy a cup of coffee. And we need to work in this business to make sure there's clarity and there's fairness and opportunity for everyone who's part of the transaction opportunity here. So, um, let's see. Kevin Lashley jumping in. Is there a merchant can do anything? I'll add it up here. can do when taking a phone order to lower the interchange costs of the transaction when taking a card to present transaction? And that's a good question, Mike. Mike, what's your first answer to it?
Again, I think my quick and to the point answer is no. Are there things you could do to prevent it from being a chargeback? Yes, you could require the CVV code be entered. You could require that the zip code be entered. I don't think that's going to lower the interchange, though, Kevin. And do you know for a fact, Nate? My
Yeah.
gut says
Well,
it's not going to.
there's very little there. I'd have to ask the question because on the when taking a card not present transaction, if you're collecting stuff that gets into level 2, level 3 optimization and you're in a system that allows that level 2 and level 3, like you're using PayTrace and doing that, there'd be some ways to be able to do some interchange optimization. It has to be in a business that allows that. So in most of the places that we're talking about, whether we're a dental office or a restaurant, those optimizations are not going to be eligible versus a invoicing situation where they're taking a card not present transaction and they're able to over the phone collect some other information that helps them fill in that third party. And then this takes me into the new rules by Visa, which we actually probably need to do a study in. But so I understand the more that are being integrated into all of our systems to do the level 2, level 3 optimizations to see those costs go in. The only way to be is to do that. But there's really only the only thing you can really do on most debit card transactions right now, to my understanding, would be the fraud protection, like you were saying, the chargeback protection, where you're making sure and you're doing all the verifications there. If you're wanting to get into level 2, level 3 optimizations and those type of things, that's a conversation to go in that I don't know enough about. And I know there's some changes that all started on October 1st, so I should learn more. That's basic me just being honest and upfront. Mike, anything else?
Um, Kevin's
Yeah.
question, it's sort of a follow up. Yeah, the AVS and the CVV are not going to lower the interchange costs, just lower the fraud threshold. I think. I mean, unless like you're doing what Nate said in an invoice situation where you're in a B2B level 2 and 3, but in the examples we're talking about here, like the dentist office or the pizzeria, it's not going to do anything to lower the interchange, unfortunately.
Yeah, because they're not using business cards as a whole. And so, because one, a lot of those optimizations, we have to get it. Do online orders with a POS system have the same rate as a card not present over the phone? So,
I online orders versus card not present on the phone. I'm not positive. I'm stumped.
well, I think on the online orders, it depends. Some of it's how the gateway is set up. You're not going to get any optimizations on like level 2, level 3. They're treated as a card not present transaction, and usually I think they're all on the same interchange. I think they're so if you're using your Capital One ink card or whatever one there or your merchant is your customer is using that, and the rate's going to be same for card not present as well as for because I believe so.
Online orders.
Online order. I think there's optimizations you can do in the e-commerce side that would be that, but online ordering is treated differently than e-commerce. But that's a good question for us to ask because I'm not going to stick by 100%.
Nah, I
The
can't either.
savings are minimal if you're getting an optimization on that interchange, and I think they're treated the same way as a card not present and an online order because but I'm not 100% sure. So we'll double check because you are doing a lot of times a lot of those online orderings are doing zip verifications and things we're not doing on a card not present transaction done like a Moto transaction. So those are great questions. I love it when we get live questions. Thank you for joining us live. Mike's
Stumpers.
jumping in there and doing that. I realized, okay, I think we're good on all the questions that we did live. We answered. I think what we're going to do coming into as we come up, we're going to try to do a mailbag once a month and kind of make this a thing. So look for that. We'll probably have one more mailbag before the holidays, and then we take a little holiday hiatus and then come back ready in 2026. And I can't believe I'm already talking about 2026. Doggone
Whew,
it. Let's have a good October. Let's do good
amen.
things. Mike, are you all up on the camera by yourself? So I was talking and it was your face. I think the best of both worlds there. Um, so
Your hair, though, it's your hair that carries it, though.
that's it.
That
So yes, well, only one of us has a little bit of hair left up here. So
is true.
but all right, my closing words as we close out this October 9th, our second Thursday of October, and it's actually fall weather in Indiana now.
Whoo, boy, oh boy. It was 45 this morning. I wasn't awake when it was probably really chilly. There was a frost warning here in northern Indiana. That's a bummer, but you know what? It's going to happen. As I always say, it's going to happen. We're going to live through it. And we'll talk about it all winter, because it's no fun. But there's still fun to be had because it's fall. And those of you that are in warmer climates, you can tune me out right now. But it's going to be in the 70s again soon, and there's a lot of fun to be had. We all have Many of us still have fall break coming with kids. My fall break is next week, and my kids are going elsewhere, and we're going somewhere by ourselves to go to Kentucky. So there's still fun to be had, work to be done this month, before it starts to get into the cold and the holidays, and we're all feeling a little bogged down because, oh geez, I tried to go I tried to go out and sell week of Thanksgiving. I couldn't find an owner. Now we run into the last 2 weeks of Christmas, and so get out and just jump on it right now. Finish this month because this is the last normal month of the year. So I just wish you well for that, for the last part of this month, and being successful. Continue to take advantage of the $600 upfront bonus on any terminal, not just Pay Anywhere, while that still runs. And have a great afternoon.
I love it. On behalf of Mike Stetzel, I'm Nate Manahan. This has been another episode of Office Hours. I believe we will be dark next Thursday, as I will be traveling to celebrate the 10-year anniversary of Quick POS and celebrating that partnership with them in Houston. And the following Thursday, I think we will be live, but there may be an alteration of time because I have some things I'm going to be traveling, but I think I can hopefully do it remotely. That's what I've been trying. I have all the equipment. I just need the internet to work with me. On behalf of Mike Stetzel, I'm Nate Manahan. We'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.
See ya.